Hello friends, welcome back. Myself Pushpender Singh, and we are going to start with our daily current affairs. So today you have 17th of July 2021. As you know that these lectures are useful for those who are preparing for the civil services examination which is conducted by the UPSC as well as other government competitive examinations, right? And for that purpose you must read the two national newspapers like the Hindu and Indian Express. Any of these newspapers you can refer, and both of these newspapers are equally good, and you can supplement your preparation with the help of these lectures which are uploaded on the YouTube on the day-to-day basis. Alright, so let's begin with the lecture. Okay, so first news is all about the India pulled back the global supply of COVAX. So here, as you know that India has undergone the second severe wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, and India has also shown the severe supply or severe the shortage of the supply of the vaccines specifically for its own population. So definitely India has to pull back its supply of the vaccines to the rest of the world, specifically after the second wave of pandemic which have recently hit the country, right? Definitely the world also having the acute shortage of the vaccines. As you know that the Delta variant of the COVID virus or novel coronavirus is also spreading around the world, and which is also because of the shortage of the vaccines. Here the Serum Institute of India, which is currently producing the vaccine called Covaxin, is pulled back the 100 of the millions of the vaccines that are supposed to go to that COVAX. That COVAX is full form, that is known as the Coalition for the Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. So that is the World Health Organization as well as the Gavi with the UNICEF has formed this COVAX, which is a coalition for the epidemic preparedness and innovation for the purpose of the equitable distribution of these vaccines around the world. Here the vaccines which are supposed to go to this COVAX will be diverted back to the indigenous supply, right? Even that Europe is still, there is some cases of the Delta variants in the Europe which is struggling to get out of it, right? So the COVAX is in the position that India has to pull back to supply the vaccines, specifically its own vulnerable population is needed for the second shot, specifically the health workers also. So here the COVAX or the Serum Institute of India pulled back hundreds of the millions of the vaccines that are supposed to go to the COVAX specifically for the purpose. And the COVAX has found itself in the third quarter in the really difficult pinch, right after the Serum Institute of India has pulled back, and that is going to change when the Pfizer dose, which will be start coming online on the August onward, right? So definitely it's a transition period, it's a difficult period, right? Not only for the India but also to the around world, and the COVAX has found is very difficult to supply those vaccines around the world with that aspect. Right, so it's quite natural that India as well as the Serum Institute of Technology is unable to provide those vaccines. Okay, next, the Godavari Krishna River water management. So recently the center has notified the Godavari Management Board as well as the Krishna River Management Board. As you know that both of these rivers are disputed rivers between the Telangana and the Andhra Pradesh. As you know that when the Andhra Pradesh was reorganized in 2014, right? When the Telangana was originated or the Telangana was evolved, right, there was some agreement that was agreed for the Telangana as well as for the India, and pursuant to that objective of that State Reorganization Act 2014, right, the center has notified the Godavari and Krishna River Water Management Board. Definitely the main purpose of establishing of this water management board is to give the more power to administer, to regulate and to operate such projects on the river Godavari as well as on the river Krishna. So such notification was announced on by the Ministry of Jal Shakti, who is basically responsible for overall administration of those river, right? So this notification is expected to reduce the friction or the fight between the two states, between specifically the Telangana and the Andhra Pradesh, and it will enable the boards to discharge their responsibility, right, with full mandate which have been required under, right, Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act 2014. So the decision of this government to notify this jurisdiction of the vote is as per the mandate of the Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act 2014, and that will bring much needed neutrality on the water resources matters between the two states like Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So here Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act 2014 contains the provisions for the effective management of the water specifically in these two states called the Telangana and the Andhra. It is also having the provision regarding the Godavari and the Krishna also, right, for that purpose, and establishment of the Godavari and Krishna River Water Management Board as well as the Apex Council to supervise the functioning of those rivers as well as the different projects over those rivers is of vital importance, right. And these notifications basically states that the board said ordinarily exercise all sort of jurisdictions which is being required to fulfill its mandate over the rivers called Krishna and the Godavari. Okay, with regard to the projects like barrages over the river Krishna and the Godavari, the dams, reservoirs, regulating structures, right, like piers, right, as well as you have the canal networks and the transmission, the channels for that purpose. And the issue was, redressed by the meetings that was held, right, with the Apex Council, which has been headed by the Union Jal Shakti Minister, Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, along with the Chief Ministers of the two states, which was held in way back in 2014 for that, 2020 for that respect. Alright, so let's move to the new news. Okay, so next news is all about the world first 3D printed steel footbridge. So here the Dutch Queen, the Maxima, have teamed up the world first, the 3D printed steel footbridge over a pedestrian bridge. So it has come with the small robot, right, to unveil right over this canal at the heart of the Amsterdam red light district. So here the Dutch Queen Maxima has unveiled the world first printed steel footbridge with the assistance of the small robot. Here the Maxima pushed a green button, right, that set the robot's arm in the motion to cut the ribbons on the both sides of the river or both sides of the river, or the with the bridge with a pair of scissors. So idea is to unveil that world first 3D printed bridge. So the distinctive feature of that bridge is the bridge is around 40 feet long, right. That will be the length of that bridge is 40 feet, and it is basically used with the help of 3D printing techniques, which is also called the wire and arc additive manufacturing technique, right, which is basically combines the robotics with welding. So this bridge basically showcases the possibilities of the technology like 3D printing over the possibility of constructing of such bridge, right. And with the help of this 3D printed steel footbridge, you can definitely decorate these bridge or as well as other structural items for aesthetically purpose, right. And it's a good option to print such type of bridge, and it is not just making things very cheaper with the help of this 3D printing technology, but it's also the more efficient uses of those resources would also be taken place, right. It will give the architects and the designers a new tool with the help of this 3D printing technology, and which is a very cool tool to think about the innovative designs for the purpose, right. And this structure is around 6 tons, right. So this 6 tons will be loaded with the help of sensors that the researchers at the Imperial College of London will use to monitor the bridge specifically in the real time basis, and that will basically gauge how it react with basically the movement of the pedestrians. So now let us understand what is this 3D printing technology. So 3D printing technology, which is also known as the additive manufacturing technology, right, which is of manufacturing of the 3-dimensional solid objects or any 3-dimensional structure with the help of a digital file. So there the creation of this 3D printed object is achieved through the additive process, right, where the objective is created by laying down a successive layer of materials, right, and until the object is created. So you have to just lay down, or you have to just put down the successive layers in order to make that object, and each of these layers can be seen, right, as a thinly sliced cross section of that particular object. So the 3D printing is just opposite to the subtractive manufacturing, right, which is being cutting out or hollowing out a piece of a metal or a plastic with the instance of machine. So it is just by putting layer after layer until the product is basically formed. So 3D printing enables you to produce a complex shapes using very less materials with more efficiently, right, than compared to the traditional, manufacturing process in that respect. All right, so let's begin to the new news. Right, the next news is all about the Bear Sheet 2 project. Right, the Bear Sheet 2 projects is basically belongs to the Israel. Right, so here the Israel space, have decided to launch this Bear Sheet 2 moon landing project in 2024. Right, and the Israel has decided to launch this project because its first project, that was just known as the Bear Sheet 1, that was basically failed, and it was suffered an engine failure when the Bear Sheet was prepared to land on the surface of the moon. Right, and after that the Israel space IL have decided to launch a new project in the name of the Bear Sheet 2 project to land this spacecraft on the surface of moon. So this Bear Sheet 2 will be comprises of the three, adjacent spacecraft, that is, an orbiter, the two landers. So orbiter will orbit over the orbit of the moon, and two landers will basically land over the surface of the moon, that is expected to land at the two sides of the moon for conducting the various scientific experiments of the surface of moon. And this entire spacecraft is expected to weigh around 630 kg only, right, and only Russia, USA and China have made, right, this journey of around 3,84,000 kilometers and landed very very safely on the surface of the moon. If the Israel is successful of landing its spacecraft on the surface of the moon, the Israel will join this league of the nations to land safely on the surface of moon. Next, the Rudraksha. So here, as you know that you might have seen in the newspaper, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi have inaugurated the International Cooperation and Convention Center. This International Cooperation and the Convention Center was recently inaugurated at Varanasi, right, with the Japanese assistance. So it's a greater the news with respect to the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's constituency. So here in this International Cooperation and the Convention Centers, as many as 108 Rudraksha have been installed, right, within the premises of this International Cooperation and Convention Center, and its roof looks like a Shiva Linga, okay, that we worship. The objective of this project or this convention center project is to provide an opportunity for the social interactions, for the cultural interactions between the people, right, at this International Convention Center. So various peoples across the walk of the life throughout the world would participate in these convention centers in order to interact them socially and culturally to propagate their ideas. So it is an ideal for holding international conferences, right, exhibitions, the music concerts, as well as various big size, the galleries and the events, right, that will be done in the Varanasi's, art and culture with respect to the music also. So this convention center is also environmental friendly building, right, for having the level 3 of the green rating. So that is having the GREHA, the level 3 rating, right, level 3 rating with respect to that project. So now let us understand what is this GREHA. So GREHA, the full form is the Green Rating for Integrated Habitat Assessment. What is that? It is a tool. First of all, the GREHA is Independent Non-for-Profit Society. What is that? It is simply a tool, right, to ascertain or to find out some sort of energy efficiency of that particular building. So this GREHA was set up by the Energy and the Resource Institute, that is called TERI, okay, as well as the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. So both TERI and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy have collaborated themselves to set up this green rating for integrated habitat assessment for a particular building. So the government of India is promoting and administering the green building in our country, specifically with respect to the possibility of using less amount of resources. So this GREHA was adopted as a national rating system for green buildings in our country by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy in the year of 2007. It seeks to minimize the resource consumption, right, that we generally overuse, as well as it seeks to minimize the waste generation, right. Overall ecological and environmental impact would be safeguarded or would be reduced, as well as it will also try to maintain the habitat conservation. So GREHA work on underlying the principle of what gets measured get managed. So ultimate aim is to reduce the resource consumption, specifically with respect to that particular projects in the building. So this is what the convention centers that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi have recently inaugurated. All right. Next, the Kanwar Yatra. So it's a very important news here. The Uttarakhand is urging, or the government of Uttarakhand is urging the devotees, right, who is going to participate in the Kanwar Yatra to comply with the ban, right, on this year on the Kanwar Yatra because of the COVID-19 pandemic, right. So this Kanwar Yatra is basically a pilgrimage which has been organized by in the Hindu month calendar of the Shravana, right. So here the saffron clad Shiva devotees, right, they generally walk barefoot without any shoes, right, with the pictures of the holy water that has been taken from the river Ganga, or that is also considered the pious or the river Ganga or the holy Ganga, right. And that devotees that carries that water, the water is used by the pilgrim to worship the Shiva lingas at the different shrines across the country, right. This also include, you know, the 12 Jyotirlingas that has been worshipped by those worshippers that basically carry this water from the river Ganga to worship those Shivalinga, right. Such type of 12 Jyotirlingas are basically set up at the different places in the country. So it's an important festival, right, which is with the similarity of Kanwar Yatra, which is being established in northern India, right. And let us understand about the Jyotirlingas. So here the Jyotirlinga is a devotional representation of Shiva, right, in order to worship during such type of yatra. And currently there are 12 traditional Jyotirlingas shrine in our country, right. For example, one Jyotirlinga is there in the Saurashtra, Gujarat, that is Somnath Jyotirlinga, right. Then the second Jyotirlinga is located in the Ujjain in the Madhya Pradesh, that is the Mahakaleshwar. The Mahakaleshwar Jyotirlinga. The third is basically located at the Shivpuri, Madhya Pradesh, that is Omkareshwar Jyotirlinga. The fourth is basically the Mallikarjuna. The Mallikarjuna Jyotirlinga, that is located at Sri Salem, Andhra Pradesh. The fifth is basically the Vajnath Jyotirlinga located at Parli, Maharashtra, right. The next is the Kedarnath one. The Kedarnath is located in the Kedarnath, Uttar Pradesh. The next is the Nageshwar. The Nageshwar is located in Darukeshwar in Gujarat, right. Then Triambakeshwar. The Triambakeshwar is located in the Nasik in the Maharashtra. Then the Bhima Shankar Jyotirlinga is located in Pune, okay. Then Rameshwar, this is located in Rameshwaram in Tamil Nadu. Then Grishneshwar, that is located in Aurangabad in Maharashtra. And the last, that is Kashi Vishwanath Jyotirlinga, that is located in Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh. So these are the 12 Jyotirlingas which are having the devotional representation of Lord Shiva. Okay, so here you can see the Kanwar Yatra, the devotees basically moves the bare feet. Some of these have wear this sandals or the chappals also, but generally they move bare feet. Okay, next, the livestock sector package scheme. So here, in order to boost the livestock sector in our country, right, specifically the breed improvement, as well as providing some much needed support to the animal husbandry, right, to make them much remunerative, the Department of Animal Husbandry have decided to approve the implementation of the special livelihood sector package scheme, right, for the purpose of the livelihood sector. So as per this scheme, the Department of Animal Husbandry will be merged into three broad categories, or the schemes of the department will be merged into three broad categories. The first is basically the development program. So here under this, the Rashtriya Gokul Mission, as well as the National Program for Dairy Development, as well as the National Livestock Mission, the Livestock Census, as well as the Integrated Sample Survey, right. All three would be the sub schemes. So here the development programs include the Rashtriya Gokul Mission, the National Program for the Dairy Development, the National Livestock Mission, as well as the livestock census will be conducted across the country. The second is the disease control program, right. The disease control program include the presence the livestock health and disease control scheme, right, which is under the Department of Animal Husbandry, as well as the National Animal Disease Control Program, which is being implemented by the Department of Animal Husbandry. The third is infrastructural development. It's very, very important that Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund have been set up, as well as the Dairy Infrastructure Development Fund was also set up. Both of these funds, Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund as well as the Dairy Infrastructure Development Fund, both of these funds will be merged, right? and the present scheme would be supporting these dairy cooperatives as well as the farmers producing organizations by engaging into the dairy activities to enhance the infrastructure activities specifically for the dairy sector. So it's very important, and there are two components, right, for the realigned national program for the dairy development. The first component, component A of the national program for dairy development, will be implemented, right, on the special emphasis on the milk, specifically for the milk procurement, the milk processing, right, for milk marketing, for milk quality, right. All these aspects will be emphasized, and the scheme is targeting towards the installation of around 8,900 bulk milk coolers, right, specifically to cover around 26,000 villages across the country. The component B of national program for dairy development will create and strengthen the infrastructural development, specifically with the help of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or the JICA. The JICA is providing much needed financial resources for the development of this the infrastructure development across 4,500 villages, right, specifically for increasing the processing capacity, as well as as well as to increase other infrastructure facility related to the preservation of the milk. So let us understand about Rashtriya Gokul Mission. The Rashtriya Gokul Mission, which was a flagship scheme launched by the government of India in December 2014, right, for the development and the conservation of indigenous breeds through a selective breeding in the breeding tract, as well as the genetic upgradation of the bovine population in our country. So this Rashtriya Gokul Mission will be implemented through the state implementing agencies across the country. Okay, and this scheme comprises the two components. The first is basically the national program for bovine breeding, that is comes under the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. That is the first component, and the second component is the national mission on bovine productivity. So these are the two components on the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. All right. So let us understand the next use, that is detergent footprint. So it's very important that we use that detergent specifically polluting the aquatic environment, right? So detergent consisting of that we use for washing the clothes, for washing the utensil, for everything, right? So many of these chemicals, these are present in the detergents. They are disposed in the water bodies, and they are toxic and the hazardous, right, for the purpose, right? In India, the per capita, the detergent consumption, right, is around 2.7 kilograms per year. That has been, this report have been published on basically one journal, right? Specifically one chemical, that is nonyl phenol, which is an hazardous chemical present in almost all detergents that are known to enter into the water bodies and the food chains, and basically causing the bioaccumulation and biomagnification, right? What is bioaccumulation? That is increasing of the concentration of a population in a particular organism. Biomagnification is some sort of related to the increasing of the concentration of a particular hazardous pollutant across the food chain. That is called biomagnification. So that type of chemicals causes the bioaccumulation as well as the biomagnification. So bioaccumulation as well as the biomagnification are basically the two important ill effects of these detergents, right, specifically with that purpose. So that basically bioaccumulates and causes the serious environmental and the health risk across the country. Okay, and it has been also been detected in the human breast milk, the blood and the urines also. So these bioaccumulated, biomagnified in the humans also through the food chain. So detergents are also carrying the oxygen reducing substances, right, which may cause the severe damages to the fishes as well as the marine animals, and ultimately causes the depletion of the marine biodiversity across the country, right? And these detergents usually contain suspected carcinogenic substances. These carcinogenic substances basically causes the cancer in the human beings specifically, and they are not biodegradable in that sense. And many of the laundry detergents that we basically use for washing of these clothes contain approximately 35 to 75% of the phosphatic salts. The basic drawback of using these phosphatic salts is that it causes the eutrophication. What is that eutrophication? The eutrophication is the process where you will have the algal bloom, right? And there is always the depletion of the dissolved oxygen, right? Dissolved oxygen is much needed for the marine organism, right? Specifically the fishes or any sort of a algae or planktons. For that purpose, when you have excess algal bloom, what will happen? These algae will consume the dissolved oxygen, and separately when these algae die, they also use this oxygen for their, their deposition, or their, the basically their degradation, that further deplete this dissolved oxygen. When you don't have the dissolved oxygen, definitely the marine organism, either they will move out from that place, they will migrate from that place, or they will simply die at that place. So these detergents basically causing so much of algal bloom, right, which is causing the decay in terms of the dissolved oxygen in the water bodies, and that is the most important responsible for creating, the dead zones across the sea. Okay, so here you can see the woman which is washing the clothes over the ghat. Okay, next, the Amazon forest is no longer acting as a carbon sink. As you know that the Amazon forest are basically the tropical forest, which is known for, the rainforest, specifically for producing the large amount of oxygen. But now the study which was published in a journal in the Nature, scientists have concluded that this Amazon forest is basically producing more carbon dioxide, or it is started emitting the carbon dioxide instead of absorbing this carbon emissions from the atmosphere. So this is a disturbing fact which have been recently been noted through this journal. And because of the significant level of the deforestation, the forest fire, the eastern Amazon forest are no longer carbon sinks, rather they are emitting the carbon or carbon dioxide across, this Amazon forest, specifically for that purpose. Okay, not only about the Amazon forest, but also some forests in the Southeast Asia have also turned into the carbon source in the next few years as a result of the the degradation, the deforestation, right, the forest fires, right, as well as the clearing of these forest patches for the purpose of agricultural activities, the plantation activities, right. All such forests would be instead of being the net oxygen supplier, they will become the net carbon supplier across the world. So here the Amazon basin, which covers around the 6 million square kilometers of the area, which is nearly the twice of the size of India. The Amazon forest is basically covers around 80% of the basin, right, which is being drained by the Amazon river, right. So it's a home of nearly fifth of the world land species. So almost 1/5 of the world land species basically resides in this Amazon basin, right, and around 30 million people, right, including millions of the indigenous people would be dependent on this Amazon basin or Amazon forest, and it also produces around 20% of the world fresh water into the oceans, right, with that respect. So that will totally disturb, first of all, the circulation of the water in the oceans. It also disturb, the lot of indigenous populations, around 30 million people that are dependent on this Amazon forest, that will also be disturbed, as well as the forest fires are also major reasons since 2013. Apart from the infrastructure development, cutting down of these trees, that the environmental degradation is also responsible for making this forest as a net carbon emitter rather than the carbon dioxide sucker. So it comprises almost 2/3 of the area of the rainforest, right, specifically the Brazilian Amazon forest. And now recently it has been recorded that there is tremendous decline of this quality of the forest resources across the world. Alright, so here you could see the forest fire which is been blazing across the rainforest of Amazon. Next, the automated train toilet sewage disposal system. So recently the scientists have developed the automated technology for the collection of the toilet waste and develop the such type of toilet waste so that it can reduce or it can maintain that toilet without much hassle. So it is easy to maintain, right, and it is also cheaper alternative to the bio toilets, right, and it is one such automatic train toilet sewage disposal system which has been newly developed by our Indian scientists. Okay, and it will also help in the segregation of the different materials and processing of those materials, right, with the usable things. So currently the existing bio toilets, which uses basically anaerobic bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria means that bacteria which degrade those waste without the oxygen, or the bacteria which do not use the oxygen, right, that is called anaerobic bacteria in order to break down those the organic substances. So here bio toilets basically use these anaerobic bacteria to convert the human waste into gas, but the bacteria can't decompose the plastics, right. If you put the plastics on the toilets and you put the cloth materials on the toilets by the passengers, how would you treat them, right? These bacteria cannot treat these plastics and the cloth materials, but hence the maintenance and the removing of such materials, right, is very difficult task, specifically for those bio-toilets. So for that purpose, the automated train toilet sewage disposal system was basically generated. This technology developed with the help of the Department of the Science and Technology, right, as well as under the Advanced Manufacturing Technology Program under the Department of the Science and Technology, right, with the alignation of the Make in India initiative, which was aligned by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So this automated system or automated train toilet sewage disposal system consisting of the three simple steps. The first is septic tank, okay, that basically placed under the track or in the train line, right, which is being top over covered with the open, or the train when the train basically approach to the septic tank, right, which is being used with the help of the radio frequency identification center, right. This reader places at the engine and the septic tank positions respectively. This sewage materials in the toilet tanks is dropped into the septic tank when they mutually synchronize with the help of these sensors, okay. And finally the septic tank covers get closed when the train departs away from the station. So that is being used with the help of the sensors. Next, the National Human Rights Commission. As you know that NHRC is basically a statutory body in our country that has been considered as a basically body to protect the human rights across the country, right. Recently the National Human Rights Commission committee was set up to investigate the complaints specifically in the West Bengal related to the post-poll alliances in the West Bengal. So this committee have recommended that whatever the violence that have been happened in the West Bengal should be transferred to the Central Bureau of Investigation. So this National Human Rights Committee or NHRC committee have recommended that all complaints related to the post-poll violence in the West Bengal after the West Bengal Legislative Assembly elections was done, all cases related to the heinous crimes like murder, rapes, right, dakati will be transferred to the Central Bureau of Investigation for that purpose, right. Let us understand about NHRC. NHRC is a statutory body that has been set up in 1993. Definitely NHRC Act was enacted by the Parliament of India. So in that respect, it is a statutory body. It's a statutory body. What is statutory? Statutory means the body which has been set up under the act passed by the Parliament of India. NHRC is basically a multi-member body which consisting of the chairperson plus the 7 members. Out of these 7 members, 3 are basically the ex officio member. And as you know that President basically appoints the chairperson as well as the members of these NHRC or National Human Rights Commission with the recommendation of a high-powered committee. This high-powered committee is being headed by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Alright. So here the next news is India's Afghan investment. So it's a very important news. As you know that the USA, the President Mr. Joe Biden have decided to retreat back from the soil of the Afghanistan. In that respect, the Taliban, which is the main stakeholder over the soil of Afghanistan, have decided to special drive to launch any sort of a the attacks over the soil of Afghanistan as well as the certain countries. So it's a very difficult task for the India to safeguard its already established assets, because India has invested almost $3 billion worth of the Indian investment projects over the soil of Afghanistan in the form of dams, in the form of roads, in the form of trade infrastructure. So here the most important aspect or most important objective of the India is to protect those established the billions of the dollars of the Indian investment on the soil of Afghanistan. Secondly, to contain the Pakistan from interfering into the India's development assistance on the soil of Afghanistan. And the third is basically to contain any sort of a the terrorist activities on the soil of Afghanistan. And the last, you can say that to safeguard all such future developmental project on the soil of Afghanistan. So it's a very important, it's a very vital that the roads, dams and the electricity transmission lines that has been built with the Indian assistance, also the schools and the hospitals should be protected, right? And India's development assistance is now estimated to around $3 billion, which is a very high. And the Afghanistan is vital for India's strategic interest, as you know, in the region, right? And as you know that in order to balance the geostrategic relationship with Pakistan, the alignment with the Afghanistan with India is very important with that respect. Okay, and bilateral trade between India and Afghanistan have reached to $1 billion. And in 2011, the India-Afghanistan Strategic Partnership Agreement that was signed between India and Afghanistan have committed to provide the Indian assistance to the Afghanistan infrastructure to build Afghanistan's infrastructure and institutions, right? To assist in terms of education and technical assistance, to encourage the investment in the Afghanistan soil, to provide a duty-free access in the Indian market, specifically the goods which are originated from Afghanistan. So it's a very important to protect this bilateral trade also, right? Various projects have been developed by the India. For example, the Salma Dam, which have been developed by the Indian assistance. Then you have the Zaranj Delaram highway, which have been developed by the Indian assistance. Then the Parliament of Afghanistan was developed with the help of Indian assistance. Then the Store Palace, which was developed by the Indian assistance. Then the power infra, which was also developed by the Indian assistance. Health infra, which was developed by the Indian assistance. The India has also assistance in terms of the transportation. India has gifted around 400 buses, the 200 mini buses for the urban transportation for the Afghanistan, right? Other projects which was currently been going on, right? The India has significant stake on the soil of Afghanistan. For example, the construction of this Setu Dam in the Kabul district is one of the important geostrategic project on the soil of Afghanistan that would provide the safe drinking water to almost 2 million residents on the soil of Afghanistan. So India pledged almost $1 million of the assistance or financial assistance for another the Aga Khan heritage projects, which has been restoration of the Aga Khan related heritage projects and the restoration of the Bala Hisar fort south of Kabul. So India has developed the significant interest on the soil of Afghanistan, and India would like to continue with that the development assistance on the soil of Afghanistan. So definitely for the geostrategic regions, the India's interest over the soil of Afghanistan is of vital importance. That's all for today. Thank you very much. We'll meet again tomorrow for our next current affairs. Thank you.